Hello, my friends, hello, and welcome once again to stately Von Manor, where Roger and I have returned. For Roger's Random Book Show, it is the return of Roger's Random Book Show. On Thanksgiving, happy Thanksgiving, everybody. I hope you're having a festive time. Roger and I are just hanging out at the manor, and we decided to wander around and pick up some random books and talk about them. And then Roger's going to have his Thanksgiving dinner, which is going to be much more disgusting than turkey, probably. Oh well, what's another homicide in Von Manor? So yes, Roger's Random Book Show, where I just wander around, pick up some random books, and then talk about them. So let's talk about some of these random books that were just lying around the manor. And they are pretty random. That's kind of what the show is. So let's talk about these random books. I've got a big stack of them here. The first one that I randomly picked up is a Western. It's a Western by Leigh Brackett. It's Follow the Free Wind by Leigh Brackett, which is not one of the books that she wrote that many people read anymore. She wrote a bunch of stuff. Mostly she's known for, of course, her science fiction and also the work that she's did in the films, in screenwriting. But mostly science fiction, but this is a Western that she wrote, and it's a biographical Western. So this is a Western about, is it James? Yeah, it's James Beckwourth. James Beckwourth, who was a real guy, frontiersman, trapper, ex-slave. He was born into slavery. He was of mixed race, I believe. I think the guy who owned him when he was a slave was his father. And he eventually went west and had all kinds of adventures and lived a very interesting life. Eventually, he narrated a bunch of his adventures to a reporter, I believe, and that came out as his memoirs. Very unreliable memoirs, as far as I understand. But interesting book, and Leigh Brackett found it particularly fascinating, I think, because she decided to write a novel about Beckwourth. And this is the novel, Follow the Free Wind. And I haven't read it yet. This is one of the many books that I've had that I haven't read, but I have intended to read. So I think this is probably going to be something that I'll read for June on the Range. But I saw it lying around. I thought I would pick it up, because it's an interesting thing. I know she wrote a novelization of a Western, but I can't remember which movie that was. She wrote a novelization of some Western movie, and I can't remember how many other Westerns she might have written. Probably not many. But she did write this one, Follow the Free Wind. So there you go. That's interesting. And this next thing is just kind of fun. This is a book that would be appropriate for Garb August. How many of you remember this show? It's Space 1999 Breakaway. So, yeah, in 1999, I don't know if you remembered this, but there was a terrible tragedy, and the moon, which used to go around the Earth, it was a big chunk of rock that used to orbit the Earth, that broke away from the Earth, and our moon base that was on the moon went with it. It was a tragedy. Yeah, the tides have not been the same, Roger. Surfing sucks now, but you know, this exciting book chronicles this tragic event. Breakaway, this is the first novel. This is actually based on that fantastic TV show that was an interesting science fiction show. It had 2 seasons, and both seasons I remember being so different from each other that they almost seemed like different shows. It starred Martin Landau, who always looked that serious. This was a television show where it was full of seriousness. At least in the first season. The second season was just weird. But I remember watching this when I was a little kid and enjoying this. And so, of course, I had to get Breakaway, Space 1999 Breakaway. I don't remember. I think I've got a few of these, Rogers, but they're all scattered because I'm very disorganized here at the manor. But I broke out this one, Breakaway, Space 1999. And this was by E.C. Tubb. E.C. Tubb. This is the first spectacular new novel in this epic story, Space 1999. That was fun. So that's just a fun book I pulled out. This next one is interesting. So this is HP Lovecraft. This is the best of HP Lovecraft. And it's a tattered old Del Rey copy. So most people were introduced of my generation. Most people of my generation were introduced to HP Lovecraft through paperback books. And at one time, a lot of people read their first Lovecraft in this book. This is the best of HP Lovecraft, blood-curdling tales of horror and the macabre, with an awesome Michael Whelan cover that wraps around and is really creepy and awesome. It's actually one of the best HP Lovecraft covers I think I've ever seen. It just captures the spirit of his work so well. This was a reprint. This was probably printed in the 90s, but it's a book I think that first came out in the 80s, I want to say. Let me see if it says. If I can get to it. Yeah, 1982, it looks like. Well, that's when the introduction, yeah, first edition, 1982. The introduction is by Robert Bloch, which I believe was originally published in the Dunwich Horror and Others in the Arkham House edition. I think that was published there first. And then it was published in this edition. The problem with this, as well as all of the other old paperbacks, is that these stories are from the magazine editions, Weird Tales editions and other magazine editions of H.P. Lovecraft stories, which are riddled with errors, which later had to be corrected by S.T. Joshi, thankfully. But yeah, so this has, I guess, what you could call a corrupted text in that it has stories that are full of errors. And so this would not be the book I would recommend for reading H.P. Lovecraft, but it is the book that introduced a lot of people to H.P. Lovecraft. And the table of contents is excellent. It does have the best of H.P. Lovecraft. What do we have? It starts off with the rats in the walls, then the picture in the house, which has never been my favorite Lovecraft story, but people seem to like it. Then The Outsider, which is, of course, fantastic. Pickman's Model. In the Vault, which is not a great Lovecraft story, so I'm not sure why In the Vault is in there, but it's in there. Then we've got The Silver Key. The Music of Eric Zahn. And then we have some great Cthulhu mythos stories. The Call of Cthulhu, The Dunwich Horror, The Whisperer in Darkness, The Color Out of Space, The Haunter of the Dark, The Thing on the Doorstep, The Shadow over Innsmouth, The Dreams in the Witch House, and it closes off with The Shadow Out of Time. So there are a couple stories in here which I don't think are the best. I don't know why In the Vault is in here when they could have put something else that was better. But mostly this is the best of H.P. Lovecraft. Has all those great Cthulhu mythos stories. Doesn't have At the Mountains of Madness because that was too long, probably, to fit in this book. But you know, it's cool because, like I said, it didn't introduce a lot of people to Lovecraft, and it's got that amazing cover, which is just fantastic. So I pulled that out. So recently I watched a video which was amazing by Library Ladder. Library Ladder is a fantastic channel. It's a step above, well, several steps above the average BookTube channel. And recently he did a video about horror anthologies, and it's the greatest video on horror anthologies you'll ever see. I'll link it down below so you can check it out. It's amazing. And one of the horror anthologies that was talked about in that video is this one. This is Wolf's Complete Book of Terror. The Complete Book of Terror, Roger. Which is an interesting one. So this is edited by Leonard Woolf, who is probably best known for being a guy who really, 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 really likes Dracula. Leonard Woolf did an annotated edition of Dracula. He also did an annotated version of Frankenstein, and I believe he did an annotated version of The Phantom of the Opera. None of those books I have, unfortunately. I wish I had all of those, but I don't. He also wrote his own fiction. He wrote a very strange novel, and I can't remember the name of the novel, but I remember that it was very weird. If you look up Leonard Woolf, that book will come up, whatever its name was. But he also put together, as an editor, this book, his Complete Book of Terror, and it has a whole lot of authors in it. And I'm not sure it's really the Complete Book of Terror. It seems to me that would be a longer book. But there is a lot of stuff in here. It has an interesting design. It has a lot of cool illustrations in Woolf's Complete Book of Terror. It's a book that looks really cool. We'll get to the table of contents. I won't go through all of the table of contents because there's a ton of stuff in here, but I'll go through the highlights. So this is interesting because it starts at the most recent story and goes back in time. It goes all the way back to ancient times, Roger, back when you were first roaming around the earth causing trouble. Starts off with Ursula K. Le Guin's The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas. Then we have some other stuff. We have Harlan Ellison's I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream is in here. Excellent choice. Shirley Jackson's The Lottery, of course. Ray Bradbury's in here with The Last Night of the World. Richard Matheson's in here with Born of Man and Woman. Algernon Blackwood is in here with a story called The Doll, which is not his best story. So wonder why Woolf made that. Woolf makes some interesting choices in this book. We have Caterpillars by E.F. Benson. Lovecraft is in here. HP Lovecraft is in here, but he's in here with The Picture in the House. Like I said, there's some people like that story. It's not my favorite, but I guess Woolf really liked it. I would have chosen, well, there's a bunch of other choices I would have made there for Lovecraft. With H.G. Wells is in here with Pollock and the Perro Man. Hans Heinz Ewers is in here with The Spider. Bunch of stuff in here. W.W. Jacobs, The Monkey's Paw, of course. Kipling is in here with The Mark of the Beast. Tons of stuff. Guy D. Maupassant with The Horla. Edgar Allan Poe is in here twice. He's in here with The Pit and the Pendulum and The Black Cat. Nathaniel Hawthorne is in here with The Birthmark, which is interesting. We have the Marquis de Sade, Roger, your old friend. An episode from Justine, so you could read that and see just how terribly he wrote. He was a terrible writer. We have Bluebeard is in here, and we have, going way back, Roger, an episode from The Golden Ass, the vampire episode. This has a ton of stuff. Really interesting anthology. And I'm not sure if it's something that you'll stumble across as you go through used bookstores, but if you ever do, pick it up. It's an interesting anthology. So there's that. Here is a book by Ernest Hemingway, everybody's favorite Ernest Hemingway. He wrote a bunch of novels that people don't like anymore, but he also wrote a bunch of journalism, and you'll find that in Byline, Ernest Hemingway. So he was a journalist, Ernest Hemingway was, and he wrote a lot of journalism, and you will find a ton of it in this book, which was printed, I think, in the 60s. Let's see. 1967 is when this first came out, and it has journalism going back to 1920. Bunch of stuff. The best rainbow trout fishing. Tuna fishing in Spain. He must have really liked fishing, that Hemingway. All kinds of stuff going through the 1930s. We have a bunch of stuff on the Spanish Civil War, of course, and we have writing from World War II. The journalism goes in here all the way to 1956. So it's an interesting book, really interesting. And I think it's out of print. I don't think I've seen this in print. If I'm wrong, let me know. It should be in print because it's some fascinating stuff from Hemingway. A lot of his stuff that you don't normally see. Again, one of those things, if you ever see it, pick it up because it's really, really interesting. It's byline Ernest Hemingway. That was random, Roger. That suits our theme. Here's another random thing, but it's not too random because I've been thinking about this book a lot recently, which is Wuthering Heights. This is the Norton Critical Edition, and I think I got this particular edition. I think came out before the pandemic, which is probably when I got it, around 2019, 2020. But it's not the one I ended up reading. I ended up reading the Penguin edition, probably because it was handy. I don't know. I probably should have read this one, though, because this has an edition based on the original text, the 1847 text, which apparently is closer to what Emily Bronte intended. This book was later revised and changes were made. The problem with the original text, apparently, is that the original text was riddled with printer's errors, which is unfortunate. And so those errors were corrected. Some other changes were made to make it more in line with the original text. So I probably should have read this one. And there's all kinds of extra stuff in here. There's criticism. There's contemporary reviews. There's all kinds of stuff in these Norton Critical editions. They're pretty awesome. And we have some of Bronte's poetry in here. There's all kinds of stuff in here. But yeah, the real thing is the novel, which is a fascinating book. I thought of this recently. You know, I saw the trailer for the really strange looking new Wuthering Heights movie, which is starring Frankenstein's monster and Barbie. You know, they're both in that movie, so that's going to be interesting. But otherwise, it looks like a very strange film, which is in its favor, you know. That's the one thing I think that movie probably has going for it, is that it's probably going to be weird. But of course, it's advertised as the greatest love story of all time, which usually Hollywood, of course, emphasizes. It's the love story. And so I think a lot of people come to this book and have their expectations dashed because they find a book about brooding passion and awful people. I mean, the people in this book are just wretched. Heathcliff is a monster. He's not a good person, Heathcliff. And so, you know, it's a little startling if you're expecting something else and you get this book. But it's also a masterpiece. I wouldn't say that about many books, that they are, yes, masterpieces. But this one is. It's an amazing book. It really took me by surprise by how different it was from what I expected, and also just how great it was. It is a great book. And I look forward to reading it again. Because there is a love story in here. You know, awful people could fall in love, Roger, which is part of the thing that happens in this book. But there's a bunch of other stuff besides. I mean, like I said, passion, obsession, all kinds of stuff are going on in this book. This book is alive. And it's fantastic. Wuthering Heights. I'm probably going to be reading this again sooner rather than later. I got a couple things in the mail. I got a couple gifts in the mail, which were extremely generous gifts. So I do appreciate these. They're both comic book things. And the first comic book thing is interesting. This is Superman Adventures Compendium 1, which has an interesting cover because if you put a hat on him, he'd look more like the Shadow than Superman. But this is Superman Adventures Compendium 1. It's a gigantic trade paperback with Superman Adventures comic books in here, and Superman Adventures were based on the 1990s Adventures of Superman cartoon. Or was it just Superman? I think it was just Superman. I can't remember what the cartoon was called. It was a long time ago. But there was a comic book about the cartoon. And it was an interesting comic book. So it's all done in the style of the cartoon, you know. And I didn't read this because, of course, it was based on a kid's cartoon, and I wasn't going to read that back in the 1990s because I was all mature and stuff. But from what I've heard, these stories are actually really good, and that this was actually a really good Superman comic, and the art is actually pretty excellent, and the printing quality is also really good. They did a nice job on this book, and it's gigantic. I don't know how many pages are in this thing. Yes, I do. Over 900 pages in a trade paperback. But it looks fantastic. So that was a princely gift that I received in the mail, and I didn't even realize that this was out. This is Compendium 1, so I assume there's a Compendium 2, or that there will be in the near future. But yeah, this looks actually kind of cool. So yeah, Superman Adventures Compendium 1. That's cool. Now this next thing is kind of magnificent. This is Conan. So it's Conan the Barbarian, bound in Blackstone, the deluxe edition. So I already have this book as the regular trade paperback collection. But this is the oversized mighty deluxe edition, and this book deserves a deluxe edition. It's written by, of course, Jim Zub, and the artwork is by Roberto de la Torre, and the artwork is magnificent in this book. So this is from the newer Conan the Barbarian series. It's been going on for over 2 years now, I think, so it's not really new anymore. But this is the first 4 issues of that series, and they did a really, really great job putting together this deluxe edition. This artwork deserves an oversized edition. We have an introduction by the legendary Roy Thomas. So that's fantastic. We have, of course, the map of the Hyborian Age. And then we get into the story, which starts off with the Free Comic Book Day issue that starts off this storyline. And it's just fantastic to see this story in an oversized edition. I was hoping for an omnibus. I was hoping that eventually you would get a, Conan by Jim Zub omnibus that would collect. I mean, they're doing the omnibus editions of all the older Conan stuff. I figured, they could do an omnibus of the newer stuff. But they went for this deluxe edition format, which is great because we do get an oversized edition of all of this fantastic artwork. And I love it. I think that this is just great stuff. And it gives me a good reason to revisit this original storyline. Hopefully, they will do deluxe editions of the rest of the issues. Hopefully. I mean, it's really nice. It would be nice to get it if they would just continue this series of the deluxe editions. I was really happy to get this. This is pretty cool. So there's that. I have one more thing. And this is about movies, Roger. It's a book about movies, specifically a book about one of my favorite things in the world, which are science fiction films from the 1950s, which could be wonderful or terrible. Could be either one of those things. And it's back in the days. In the 1950s, horror movies and science fiction all got kind of mingled together. There were not a lot of straight horror films being produced in the 1950s, but you got a lot of giant bugs and giant dinosaurs and stuff like that going on, as well as flying saucers and a lot of aliens. So I got a while back this book. This is Keep Watching the Skies. Keep Watching the Skies, written by Bill Warren, which is a fantastic book. It's fantastic. But when I ordered this, I didn't realize it, but I only ordered part 1. This is volume 1, A to K. This is alphabetical. But it's fantastic because this book has literally every science fiction book or every science fiction movie that was produced, including The Day the Earth Stood Still, and long articles on all of these films, even the terrible ones. Here's The Deadly Mantis, which was a masterpiece. But I got this whenever I got it, and I realized I only got half the book. So I ordered a used hardcover edition, which had the whole thing. Came in a plain brown wrapper. But yes, it doesn't have a cover, but this is actually the whole thing. Keep Watching the Skies, the 21st Century Edition. And it also has some cool posters in this. Look at that. It's glorious. I love these old movies from the 50s. They used to play these when I was a kid, of course, on TV. Every Saturday they would have some old horror movie or old science fiction film from the 1950s. And so it's really cool to have this Plan 9. What a classic. What a classic. And this book is actually excellent. Even the terrible movies, and Hold That Line from 1952 was definitely a terrible movie. Even those, he spends a lot of time on. The Horror Chamber of Dr. Faustus, that's actually from 1960. This does go up into the first couple years of the 1960s, I think. Horrors of the Black Museum. It's just really, really cool. And like I said, very comprehensive. As you can imagine, Them from 1954 gets a lot of pages devoted to it because that was such a great film about the giant ants. The giant ants. I love those old 1950s movies. And yeah, I got them in this mysterious plain brown wrapper of a cover. But this was the actual cover of it for my 1/2 paperback edition. And it is pretty awesome. I don't know how available this book is nowadays. Just be careful when you order it. You don't order half of it like I did back in the day. I think that's everything, Roger. So I'm going to go and prepare a mighty feast. And Roger is going to go and find a mighty feast for himself, which will probably be something like a homicide. So that's it. I hope you guys have a great Thanksgiving. I hope you have a fun time. I'm just going to eat a lot and walk dogs and read some books. I will catch you next time.